Shalom, family. It's the Hebrew life again. It's Shaq Base Jerusalem. And I'm back with another lesson. This is Q.P.A. Questions, problems, and answers. Let's get it, family.
Rules locked in the times, everybody coming to the watchman. Tribulation, every nation, devil out here plotting. Going back to the world that's like eating your vomit. Son of the highest, crack the sky like a comet. We don't need opinions, you could really keep your comments. Thought he wasn't coming, but he had perfect timing. Can't be sleeping on your job, man, we the watchmen. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, like a rocket. Israel, we got problems, man, yeah, they can't.
Yeah, family. I know we early on the Q.P.A. We're going to go and get it out the way. First up, fair use. First up, fair use. Don't want no problems. So, family, there's a lot going on out there in the world. I done collected a few subjects that I seen that I felt needed to be put out there, and we gonna get to it. It's the last days, so you should see all kind of things: rumors of wars, earthquakes in diverse places, and the false prophet and the beast showing their face. A lot coming this year. I could feel it. It's been a lot of blasphemy. It's been a lot of wrongdoing, and the world just ain't getting better. It's getting worse and worse. All for some fake unity to come to fix this big mess they made. But it'll never fully be fixed. It'll just be a band-aid to the problems that they have made for themselves. First up, let's check out these temperatures. We got all-time lows. Man, it's colder than the freezer box out there. Record-breaking colds.
This morning, an Arctic blast is sweeping the country. More than 100 million Americans waking up to bitter cold.
So when it's like this, right, and it's calm and it's just falling down.
It's fine. It feels good.
But when you feel that wind.
It feels really, I felt like my jaw was freezing. Oof. It was very cold.
In Grand Rapids, Michigan, today is expected to be the 7th straight day of snow. The frigid punch also hitting millions with bone-chilling temperatures, making the job even harder for first responders. In Oregon, officials say a woman was killed in an RV fire after a tree fell on the vehicle. First responders finding some roads impassable and a fire hydrant believed to be likely frozen. Much of the country could dip 20 to 45 degrees below average today, including parts of Texas, where cold weather has overwhelmed the power grid in recent years.
If you lose power, you lose heat, then you risk your pipes freezing. So, yeah, we might have to look into installing a generator, just in case.
For those braving the cold, getting around has been a mess. Hundreds of flights canceled because of the storms, stranding passengers. Even Amtrak also canceling some trains. And driving has been treacherous too, with icy roads and blinding snow. Officials say this Colorado highway was hit by an avalanche.
It's overall just been a terrible, terrible winter. And it came out of nowhere.
Oh, he's gone.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, family. As y'all see, the snow is out of control. They playing with the weather and doing all kind of stuff, melting the polar caps. It's gonna cause all kind of new things to show. And plus, being the last days, you ain't gonna know whether it's summer or winter with these people. But it's cold out there, and that was just the spin on who could protect themselves. But there's also people out there who have no shelter, who have no help out there in the world and in the cold. And America has a big homeless problem with people all over the streets in the west of America and all of the states. I can't even say California, Oregon, and all kind of states are complaining about the homeless problem. People are scared to go to work because there's no jobs. People are getting fired. People either don't have a place to stay because the shelter is filled, or they just on hard times, family.
Temperatures colder than we've seen in a while. It's hard to believe anyone could survive spending the night outdoors.
But it's the stark reality for many of the city's homeless. CBS 2's Andrew Ramos spent the day with a group working to keep the less fortunate safe and warm.
So yeah, we have socks, hats, gloves, hygiene kits.
Call them essentials, or in this case, survival gear. Despite the frigid cold, the street medicine team at the night ministry moved with little hesitation. The goal for today, no different to what they do all year round.
Hey there, night ministry, street medicine.
We have people who are living outside. We want to make sure that they're safe. We want to make sure that they have the supplies they need.
Their street medicine outreach is just one service the Chicago-based organization has been providing to the city's homeless for decades, offering the less fortunate everything from housing support to health care. And with the bitter and dangerous cold snap, that outreach becomes all the more critical.
The worst case scenario is you try to open a tent or, knock and no one's answering and you go in and they're not responding.
On this day, their mobile unit covers a lot of ground in the uptown neighborhood, coming across some who welcome their help and others who decline it. Now, these outreach missions are pretty unpredictable. It's just a matter of driving to these locations where they know these tent encampments are and just jumping out of the van as soon as they see that there is a need at that location.
It's just really hard seeing people, out in the cold, but it's also the resilience that these people show is incredible. I mean, just people find a way. Find a way to stay warm, find a way to stay fed.
Yeah, family. Shout out to those that's helping those in need. We've been commanded to. There's people out there freezing to death. There's people out there dying of starvation and dying of all kind of sicknesses because they can't get the medical help. So we got to look out for those that truly need the help. So let's look into this homeless problem in California. We can make a whole show about the homelessness that's going on in America. It's really a sad thing that a country that's supposed to be a first world country with all the extremities they need to run an upstanding society is going through this. And then they have the nerve to bring in migrants when they have a domestic problem already with homelessness. Can't house your own people. Where you gonna house your guests?
9 states have decided that they want to ban homeless people from being in public. Now, just from that title alone, when I hear that, I'm like, well, if you're homeless and you're outside, isn't outside the public? So where are they going to go? Are they going to go off into the woods or something like that? Are going to disappear in the thin air? Like, where are they supposed to go? Now, specifically, it is being spearheaded by that of Governor Gavin Newsom of California. And in a nutshell, this is what the case is comprised of. It says liberal governor, which is Gavin Newsom, demands Supreme Court allow him more power to remove homeless camps as San Francisco business exodus gathers pace. It also says comes after 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that removal breaks the 8th Amendment ban on cruel and unusual punishment. Says Supreme Court agreed on Friday to examine whether the ruling goes too far. All right. And so again, Governor Gavin Newsom of California, he is leading the charge on that, as San Francisco is in California. And San Francisco has a lot of businesses. They said like 100 since the pandemic. And then, of course, with the homeless population being on the rise, of course, there's homeless people sleeping on sidewalks and blankets and tents in front of these businesses. And if you've ever been to San Francisco, you know, at one point in time, it was a very nice place to live, very expensive, very artsy and things like that. And so, yes, people, tourists, and even people who live there like to walk down the street with their latte and like to go into some of these businesses. But it's kind of hard to do when you have homeless people sleeping on the street. But again, where are they supposed to go? Where? Then, not to be gross, to take it a step further, homeless people aren't allowed to use the restroom in people's establishments, so they go where they're at. And yeah, it creates a health concern because they said in Los Angeles a couple of years back, I think it was like the bubonic plague or something like that was coming back due to being homeless and the things that they leave and all that other stuff, where it's rats and a whole bunch of other critters just kind of running around. And downtown Los Angeles, and if you've ever been to downtown Los Angeles, there's a copious amount of businesses there and things to do and all that. And so, of course, people walking down the street, they don't want to see all of that and definitely don't want to risk contracting something, right? But this is kind of going to sound kind of weird, but I have a good point in saying this. I'm glad that the homeless people are on the street, not because that's the best place for them. I'm glad that they're there in the public so that everybody, business owners, politicians, and anybody that has the power to do something about it, they can see them. Because if they're hiding, then it's like out of sight, out of mind, right? I'm glad that they can see that instead of helping American citizens or Californians that are homeless, and that they decide to help the migrants, because there in California, Gavin Newsom signed in the law that they're going to help migrants no matter what their status is, to the tune of $2.6 billion a year. So I'm glad that Gavin Newsom is being taken to task with, not wanting the homeless people on the street and that businesses are closing up. And I'm glad that he's having to also be taken to task. Well, you spending all that money on migrants or people who shouldn't be here. But you got homeless Americans, California sleeping on the street. So the Supreme Court is going to decide whether it's constitutional to make a ban, because again, where are they going to go? But instead of going to the court and asking them to allow them to ban homeless people from sleeping in public, why not just build some shelters? You got $2.6 billion a year to help the migrants, and you should have $2.6 billion a year to help migrants.
Yeah, family. We back. So as you see, America has a big homeless problem. If you ask me, it's not really a problem for us. It's not a problem for them. It's more of a problem for us. It's our problems we need to handle. These things have been arranged to bring in camps that they want to put people in under the code of FEMA or whatever the case may be. So let's move forward. We have the Houthis of Yemen. They said ain't nobody getting no goods. They said any ship they see from America or Israel, they said they taking a shot at it. And it's going down over there. I believe it's the Red Sea. Hey, family, y'all check this out.
Biplane. And a sweeping victory for Donald Trump in Iowa, the former US president, the clear Republican candidate frontrunner. Good evening. Yemen's Houthi rebels have continued their attacks on international shipping routes today, directly hitting a US cargo ship in the Gulf of Aden. Tonight, we look at where widening Middle East conflict is occurring. The Iran-backed Houthi fighters say they're expanding their targets in retaliation for last week's US-led airstrikes on its bases. Iran says it fired ballistic missiles at Israeli and US targets inside northern Iraq. Iran also claimed retaliatory strikes against the IS group in Syria. And from their bases in Yemen, the Houthi group now says it will target all American and British ships in the region.
The Houthis have launched dozens of drones and missiles at targets in the Red Sea over the past 2 months. Most have either missed or been shot down. Not today's. The US-owned Gibraltar Eagle struck with an anti-ship ballistic missile. A fire broke out, but the ship reported no injuries or significant damage and continued on its journey. It's just the second time a ship has been targeted so far from the Houthis' stronghold in northern Yemen. While most of the Houthis' attacks have been in the Red Sea, this one was in the Gulf of Aden, more than 170 kilometres off Yemen's south coast. The Houthis first said they were targeting ships linked to Israel in support of Palestinians in Gaza. Now they're threatening more attacks on more targets than ever.
إن القوات المسلحة اليمنية تعتبر كافة السفن والقطع الحربية الأمريكية والبريطانية المشاركة في العدوان على بلدنا أهدافا معادية ضمن بنك أهداف قواتنا.
The latest attack, they say, was in response to last week's US-led airstrikes on Yemeni soil. Designed, the UK says, to degrade the Houthis' ability to keep firing on the Red Sea.
I do not take decisions on the use of force lightly. That's why I stress that this action was taken in self-defence. It was limited, not escalatory. It was a necessary and proportionate response to a direct threat to UK vessels and therefore to the UK itself.
Yet the attacks continue. The Houthis emerged in the 90s as an armed political group. When the Arab Spring arrived in 2011, anti-government protests swept Yemen. Political instability was rife and the Houthis took advantage of it, quickly building up a solid support base. Then, in 2014, they seized the capital and large parts of the country. They've been at war with a Saudi-led pro-government coalition ever since. And after 9 years of bombardment by some of the region's strongest military powers, the Houthis are still standing.
We've been here.
Yeah, family. As y'all see, the Houthis ain't playing. And this history of the Houthis go deep because they've been battling with Saudi Arabia for years and getting bombed. And I remember probably 10 years back, they were really not even in this position to be an army because they were dealing with hunger problems and, famine problems on top of dealing with the bombs coming and the military attacks coming. So this is a deep-rooted battle and a deep-rooted enemy of America because of all the things that's happened over the years.
Since 2015, a Saudi-led coalition has been waging a war against the Houthi rebels in Yemen, unleashing one of the most severe humanitarian crises in recent history. But who are the Houthis? The Houthis make up around 25% of Yemen's population. Although they belong to the Shia sect of Islam, they are Zaydis. They follow a branch that's different to the Twelver Shia Islam, the dominant practice in Iran, Iraq, and Lebanon. Zaydis take their name from Zayd ibn Ali, the great-grandson of Ali who was killed in an uprising. Zayd is revered as a leader that fought against a corrupt regime. The Zaydi believe that it is their religious duty to fight against unjust rulers. That contrasts with most Sunni and Shia doctrines that usually encourage unity over disorder. For 1,000 years, Zaydis have lived in the mountains of former northern Yemen in what is present-day Saada province bordering Saudi Arabia. In 1978, Ali Abdullah Saleh, a Zaydi, came to power in former North Yemen. 12 years later, North Yemen and South Yemen were united into one country. Saleh's rule lasted until 2011. In the late 80s, Saudi-funded Salafi institutes were established in the north of Yemen with state support. This made Zaydis feel marginalized. They responded by trying to revive their religion and culture under the leadership of Hussein Badruddin al-Houthi, and the Houthi movement was born. But it was the 2003 war in Iraq that made the group more politically active. The Houthis opposed the US-led invasion of Iraq. Hussein al-Houthi began criticizing Saleh, calling him a US-backed dictator. When some Houthis protested in mosques in the capital Sana'a, Saleh tried to crack down on the movement by sending troops to arrest Hussein al-Houthi. This triggered the first armed conflict between the government and the Houthis. Hussein al-Houthi was killed in 2004, and his brother, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, took over. Saudi Arabia backed the government, and despite religious differences, Iran began supporting the Houthis. The Houthi movement accepted Iran's support, but resisted direct interference. For the Iranians, the Houthis being a counterforce to Saudi interests was enough. The Houthis achieved initial military success which provoked more Saudi-backed government force. The parties then reached a ceasefire agreement in 2010. A year later, when the Arab Spring reached Yemen, the Houthis were one of many groups calling for Saleh to step down. And when he did, the Houthis joined a national dialogue. But they were unhappy with the outcome, as it would reduce their territorial autonomy. The new president, Abdurrabbu Mansur Hadi, also backed by the Saudis, had trouble stabilizing the country. He couldn't stop al-Qaeda attacks, and fuel prices and unemployment began to skyrocket. This provoked a new rebellion. This time the Houthis allied with their once sworn enemy, former President Saleh, who still had military forces loyal to him. By 2015, Houthi rebels had toppled the government and gained control of Yemen's major cities. When they entered Sana'a, they rebranded themselves as Ansar Allah, or the Helpers of God, and opened air traffic between Tehran and Yemen, promising cheap oil. Across the northern border, Saudi Arabia's king Salman bin Abdulaziz ascended the throne and saw the Houthis as a dangerous and an important pawn in the proxy war against Iran. Saudi Arabia formed a coalition with other Arab states backed by the US, UK, and France and began strikes on the Houthis. Despite this, 3 years later, the Houthis still control large parts of the country, and the war has been costly. More than 10,000 people have been killed, and almost 2 million children under the age of 5 are considered acutely malnourished.
Yeah, fam. As y'all see, this is a deep-rooted war between the Yemen Houthis and Saudi Arabia, Israel, and America. The only people that came to their aid when they were being trodden down was the Iranians. And this is a proxy war. Iran is a big player in the game, and they know how to play. They know how to fight wars. A proxy war is basically a war that's being fought through other countries, other small countries. America fights proxy wars like they're fighting a proxy war now against Russia through Ukraine, and fighting another proxy war against China through Taiwan. Well, Iran said we're going to fight a war against America and Israel through Yemen. And that's what's going on. So let's look into this battle that's going on in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea, where these companies are being attacked by the Houthis, and they're messing up all the business of America, Europe, and Israel right now.
Since early December, Houthi rebels have strangled one of the most strategic ocean waterways for international trade. Vessels have been boarded, missiles have been fired, and drones have been deployed. Simultaneously, the navies of the world, including the US Navy, have been slow to react. As a result, global maritime trade has been severely disrupted. The world's largest container shipping companies have stopped shipments through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. The US Navy has moved a carrier strike group from the Persian Gulf into the Gulf of Aden. At the same time, a new 10-country naval task force is being set up to protect shipping in the region, but the Americans don't want to get tied up in the Yemeni proxy conflict. Still worse, the neighboring powers have inconsistent interests. Egypt's economy is in pain, Iran is looking for new leverage, Saudi Arabia has a ceasefire with the Houthis, China is gloating to see the US Navy stretched thinly, and the UAE wants to escalate things but doesn't want to get its hands dirty. Broadly speaking, the Red Sea is a confluence of geography, economics, technology, and geopolitics. The Houthis have now declared American ships as targets and are looking to use force, but they're poking the hornet's nest. The last thing you want to do is threaten the US Navy with a good time. Today's of 12 and 8% of liquefied natural gas is shipped 20% of international container traffic. Also noteworthy, roughly 10% of the world's maritime oil and 8% of liquefied natural gas is shipped through the same route. However, Houthi rebels from Yemen have put a stop to that by using missiles, drones, and fast attack ships. At its narrowest point, the Bab al-Mandab Strait is about 29 kilometers wide, and that is where the raids have taken place. So far, the Houthis have directly targeted at least 12 commercial vessels transiting the region, firing over 100 drones and missiles at ships from more than a dozen countries. The Houthis, who are backed by Iran, say the attacks are in solidarity with the Palestinians. But the maritime blockade is also a geopolitical leverage for Iran vis-à-vis America and Israel. For added context, Iran's other proxy, Hezbollah, has at least 130,000 rockets and missiles aimed at Israel. But Iran cannot employ Hezbollah's firepower to attack Israel, since doing so would open Pandora's box and result in the American bombardment of Iran. Therefore, instead of Hezbollah, Iran has chosen to retaliate by other means. The Red Sea is a place where the Iranians have gained substantial power in recent years owing to the Houthis. So, this is as close to the game of geopolitical chess as it gets. Regardless of the strategic maneuvering, the Houthi attacks are an affront to the freedom of navigation and compel economic powerhouses to reconsider global supply chains. In response to the maritime blockade, 4 of the world's 5 largest container shipping companies have suspended shipping through the Red Sea. These include Denmark's Maersk, France's CMA CGM, Germany's Hapag-Lloyd, and Switzerland's MSC. Together, these companies account for more than 50% of global container shipping capacity. Multinational British Petroleum is stopping shipments through the Red Sea as well. If other energy firms join the call, oil and gas supplies could be in severe trouble. Container ships make...
Yeah, family. As y'all see, big business being halted. You would never know that them companies came out of Europe. You know, you see a lot of them companies, BP, you see a lot of them companies, Maersk, and all of that. You see that over here in America. They doing business overseas, and the Houthis said it ain't happening. So, as y'all see, the war continues in the Middle East. So, let's take a look at food. Everybody loves rice. Rice is a major part of everybody's diet. It's on the menu for many restaurants. And it's a worldwide thing that's ate and loved and in anybody's cabinet around the world. So let's see where rice is going lately, because it's a shortage on rice, and India said they're not going to give all their food up when they have none.
Rice is a crucial staple for over half of the world's population, and there might be a shortage that puts communities that need affordable rice on the precipice of crisis.
The only shortage out there right now, it's India's plain white long grain rice. It's cheap and lower quality that they ship to developing countries.
Because rice is, loved all over the world, it also continues to be a manipulated commodity by governments in the world.
India's export bans are reverberating through global rice markets.
The protectionist measures basically send a panic signal globally.
The U.S. has been dealing with India's over-subsidization. They've created this monster by subsidizing so much that now there's so many rice farmers that if they upset those farmers, that's a huge voting bloc.
America's rice industry contributes over $34 billion to the economy. But U.S. farmers face the same volatility.
And our farmers, they'll go up against any rice farmer in the world, but they can't compete with a foreign government.
Rice is a finicky crop, and the U.S. produces about 20 billion pounds of it every year, despite changing climates that are making it even more difficult to grow.
With rice, it's not just a question of enough water, but enough water at the right time. So it doesn't need to be a corn or a soybean to be incredibly important to the U.S. agricultural economy.
Here's how rice markets can threaten affordable food, trade relationships, and the livelihoods of millions of farmers. There are about 40,000 different varieties of rice. but the market is comprised mainly of long grain, medium grain, and short grain rices, as well as higher value rices like jasmine and basmati rice.
Southeast Texans produce millions of bushels of rice yearly.
People don't really think we grow rice in the U.S. First of all, it's a small crop, right? We're on 3 million acres as opposed to some of the other crops. It's a crop that makes use of a lot of land that other crops can't make use of.
Most of the rice harvested in the U.S. is eaten in the U.S., about 80% of it.
And also, if you think about your cereals like Rice Krispies, Kellogg's.
With Tex-Mex or Chinese food service like Chipotle.
Rice is a key input into many products that we consume, but especially beer.
Anheuser-Busch is the #1 user of U.S. rice domestically.
Rice requires unique growing conditions. It's a plant that's half submerged in pools of water, often on top of heavy clay soils that wouldn't effectively grow other crops.
At times when you think of a rice field, think of steppes, a field maybe in India or maybe in Vietnam or Thailand. We don't have land like that, right? Our land is flat, but the farmers will grade it slightly so that the water can move from one end of the field to the other, and they can capture it and recycle it.
While the U.S. is the largest rice exporter outside of Asia, the U.S. only accounts for around 5% of global rice exports. The onset of the coronavirus pandemic and then the outbreak of the Russia-Ukraine war caused global inflationary pressures. Some countries responded to the market shock with export bans.
For an individual country, it makes sense to do export bans and help the more vulnerable parts of society. But if a lot of countries do that, and they are doing that now, it further pushes up prices.
Then one of the top rice-producing countries limited exports. India, a country which exports make up 40% of the world's rice supply.
Yeah, India is a larger rice exporter than the next 4 rice exporters in the world.
In September 2022, India banned exports of broken rice and imposed a 20% duty on exports of some rice varieties.
India is a country that has suffered from food insecurity in a significant way. There's an understandable desire to ensure appropriate availability of staple foods like rice within the country. But there's a trade-off of that.
You end up, distorting the price signal for farmers.
Rice prices spiked 15 to 20%. By 2023, rice prices hit their highest in almost 12 years. India added another export ban in July 2023 on its plain white long grain rice.
So it is concerning that we see the sharp rise in rice prices across the region.
Part of the problem is that, despite facing the same rising input costs for energy and fertilizer, in comparison to other agricultural commodities, market prices for rice stayed relatively stable, which makes it harder for farmers to make ends meet.
The equipment is expensive, the investment's expensive, and then you have all these outside factors really working against you. A lot of times people will picture Ma and Pa Kettle in overalls with a pitchfork. They're not going to picture an $850,000 combine that's sitting out there that's connected to satellites.
Yeah. So, as y'all see, it's a big problem. Let's see what's the future. And as y'all see, it's at a 12-year high surge on the prices.
In countries that depend on its affordable rice. That adds to fears of global food insecurity if rice supplies are limited.
It's impossible to think about rice without thinking about the food security lens.
Over 42 countries depend on India for over 50% of their total rice imports.
The only shortage out there right now would really be India's plain white long grain rice that they ship to a lot of countries throughout Africa and Southeast Asia. They don't ship their best rice there. It's cheap and it's lower quality. And when they slap a ban in place, that impacted those developing countries the hardest.
India has historically been the cheapest supplier of rice.
Africa or Southeast Asia, they're going to buy from India because they've got a ton of rice. They can get it here fairly quickly.
For example, Indian rice made up over 80% of the market share in a number of African countries.
But even in places like Indonesia, which is one of the largest producer itself, it is still vulnerable because it still requires imports to satisfy domestic demand.
India states that its export bans ensure ample food supplies domestically. However, at the same time, food inflation concerns are at the center of India's elections.
From an economic standpoint, it does not make sense for them to keep this ban in place or to have ever put it in place in the first place. It's purely political. Prime Minister Modi is running for re-election. He's seen consumers complaining about increased inflation and rice prices domestically. And what they're really doing is they're trying to secure enough rice in their domestic market that their prices will drop for consumers.
India has stockpiles of rice in government storage and is harvesting one of the largest rice crops on record.
The other risks that we see are, of course, rising temperatures, but specifically rising nighttime temperatures, because rice likes this kind of warmer day and cooler night.
The rice industry faces environmental threats that can lower yields or destroy crops entirely, making it harder for farms to make a profit. For example, water is crucial for rice production, but it can't be too much or too little.
I think we've seen, significant drought in California, causing in 2022 a 50% reduction in planted acres. And now that there's been more water availability this year, significant recovery, maybe 40% increases in yield estimated. And then, of course, you bring water and temperature together, and what you get is moisture, and that can become a breeding ground for pest and disease, or weeds and herbs and things that are already fairly challenging for rice producers.
Yeah, family. So y'all see, rice is becoming a problem because everybody wants it, and it's only coming from India, and mainly India and a couple other places in Indonesia. But America produces their own rice, but they only account for 5% of the world's rice. So, if anything hit the fan, they'll have rice, but that's depending on what the Most High does to the weather, because it needs a certain condition to grow. So let's move forward. You have the war in Ukraine. I know people forgot about it because the news isn't airing it. But America is pulling out of this war. They're pulling their resources and their funds out of this war. And they say they have no more money to give in the Ukraine war. So it seems to me, and Russia is kicking up on their military progression. So it seems to me that America got Ukraine as something that they can't get out of, and they don't have the resources to contend in.
Rising risk. Lebanese Hezbollah militants will strike Americans in the Middle East and even potentially hit inside the United States. These officials say the chance for an assault on U.S. soil is growing. These officials declined to give any specifics about the kind of attacks Hezbollah might be considering, but they did say that this particular terror group has capabilities that other terror groups don't. All of this, Jim, made even more concerning when you consider our open southern border. So what do you think about this?
Anyone of military age who has wanted to walk across our southern border has been able to do so. And the Biden administration, instead of dealing with that as a threat, has welcomed them, given them resources, and moved them throughout the country. So essentially, we've been bringing everyone in with no idea who they are. And now I'm certain that terror groups, including Hezbollah, have used that to place some of their operatives in the United States. They've been running crime syndicate type operations previously in the United States. We've caught them doing that. So there's no chance that they didn't take advantage of this. It's a massive failure by the Biden administration because the United States inside our borders is just one collection of giant soft targets. We can't protect all of it. And if they decide to take advantage of it, they can. And American citizens will die.
Let me just be clear. I think last night's strike was important. But that said, did last night's strike against the Houthis increase the chance of the Houthis or Hezbollah, as Carly mentioned, increasing that chance of an attack on our homeland, do you think?
100%. It has increased that possibility, and we need to act accordingly. That doesn't mean we should fail to do what we need to do as the only global superpower. It's up to us to make sure.
Zelensky received a warm welcome at the Grammys. Cut to the present, the U.S. has now suspended military aid to Ukraine. Here's John Kirby making that announcement.
New updates on military assistance to Ukraine? I mean, has the well really run dry here, or what does it look like?
We have issued the last drawdown package that we had funding to support, and that's why it's critical that Congress move on that national security supplemental request, and we get more funding. The assistance that we provided has now ground to a halt. The attacks that the Russians are conducting are only increasing. And now, as I talked about earlier this week, they're using North Korean ballistic missiles to do their dirty work. So the need is acute right now, particularly in these winter months.
Ukraine will likely not receive any more funding unless Congress passes a new spending package. The deal is seemingly contingent on some sort of compromise on Republican demands regarding the southern border. So far, the U.S. has directed more than $75 billion in military, financial, and humanitarian support to Ukraine.
Yeah, family. Y'all seen it. Y'all heard it. No more cash. No more care packages for Ukraine. They got too much other stuff going on. You see, as I showed y'all in the Middle East and in the Pacific with China, they can't spend their money to keep fighting with the Russians. They know they're not going to win, so they pulling out.
Documents from Germany reveal that world leaders are now preparing for Russia to launch World War III. They would expand the war on Ukraine by attacking NATO countries next year. Next year, there's a timetable here. Member of the House Armed Services Committee, Congressman Pat Fallon, is with me. It does sound like these documents reveal a timetable for a Russian attack. What more do we know about this?
Well, Stuart, I'm just going to comment on what I've seen in the press for obvious reasons. But you know, it's Russia's always presented a danger. And I think countries that are in the East, like Finland, for instance, have always seen it. Unfortunately, larger countries like Germany have taken a 30-minute nap, or sorry, a 30-year nap, rather. Wow. Finland's more prepared to defend themselves than the country of Germany, the country with the fourth largest economy in the world. So it's something that you always prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
But I just remember right before Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years ago, we knew they were coming. We were telling the media the White House was saying, look, you've got this military force being assembled. Here comes the invasion. It seems like this is a repeat performance. They're planning to attack next year. I think that's extraordinary stuff.
Well, I think, you know, Putin, you got to look at him like, Stuart, like a mob boss. And there is obviously he's a loose cannon, but he's got some rationality. And attacking NATO, an attack on one being an attack on all. You know, the Suwalki Gap is a small, it's about a 40-mile strip of land that separates Belarus, which is just a Russian puppet, to the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. And that would then cut off the Baltic states of Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia. So that's something that we're very concerned with. Okay. But, you know, years ago, NATO agreed that each NATO country would spend 2% of their GDP on defense. And only 11 of the 30 countries in NATO that have militaries, not including Iceland, have done that. Yeah. And all of them are in the East, except for the United Kingdom and the United States. Yeah. So Germany and the rest of Europe have to take this threat far more seriously.
Trump got them to pay for more of their own defense. Are you a Trump guy?
Big time. Yes, I endorse the president. He's endorsed me in the past for Congress, and I was very glad to see the results in Iowa.
A quick point about the caucuses yesterday. Fox News voter analysis reveals that immigration was the most important issue to Iowa voters. And yet Iowa, of course, is not a border state. What do you make of that?
Oh, I think Joe Biden's stew has made every state a border state. When you consider that in the past two administrations before Joe Biden became president, the first 34 months, there were comparable illegal immigration numbers, 1.5 million under Obama, 1.6 million under Trump, and then 8 million in the first 34 months, illegal border crossings, that is. And there's 170 countries that have included citizens that have crossed the border illegally. And here's a startling statistic. 2 years ago, there were 3 years ago, there were 323 Chinese nationals that crossed the southern border illegally. Last year, it was 24,000. We've never had a month in our history of over 200,000 illegal border crossings, Stuart. Under Joe Biden, it's been 20. So the border is wide open and people.
Yeah, family. So as y'all see, Russia is preparing to expand this war. They talking about attacking European countries. Germany scared. They saying, hey, look, we need to prepare for this. They feel like Russia going to attack them in 2025. And as you see, America has a big problem biting this trying to make sure Trump ain't available to run against him. And Iowa voted, and many other states voted, and the biggest problem right now is immigration. They're scared of all these new people around them. But this is the land of the free. I mean, what's the problem? Everybody wants to come over here. So they should understand that. All right, next we have Pakistan and I believe Pakistan. Is it Pakistan or Iraq? No, it's Pakistan and Iran, I believe. They've been shooting missiles at each other. And, it's been a little war going on the border over there in Pakistan. Let's see what's going on.
What happens when you attack a nuclear power? Well, Iran tried to find out. They fired missiles into Pakistan on Tuesday. Less than 48 hours later, the response has come. Pakistan has hit back. They used a number of weapons to strike Iran: killer drones, rockets, loitering munitions, and standoff weapons. The operation is being called Marg Bar Sarmachar, meaning death to guerrilla fighters. This place was the target, a village near the Iranian city of Saravan. It's located in the Sistan Balochistan province, distance from the border, possibly less than 100 kilometers. Now, Pakistan says it was attacking Baloch militants, members of a group called the BLA, the Baloch Liberation Army, BLA. Their goal is to create an independent Balochistan, basically to break away from Pakistan. Islamabad says they had credible intelligence. Apparently, the Baloch militants were planning something big. But let's not kid ourselves. This was a retaliatory strike. Iran bombed Pakistan, so Pakistan had to bomb Iran back. Their foreign ministry is now talking of de-escalation.
Acts like the one which took place a couple of nights ago create difficulties and give the adversaries of our friendship the pretext to create more difficulties in the region. We will continue to engage with our neighbor Iran to ensure that peace prevails and there is and that the two countries make concerted and coordinated efforts to combat the threat of terrorism.
What about Pakistan's army? They're on high alert right now, but the army statement did focus on dialogue and cooperation. So clearly Pakistan has had enough. They've made their point. What about Iran? Well, Tehran has summoned Pakistan's top diplomat in the country. They've also condemned the strikes. As for casualties, 9 people were killed. Iran says all of them were foreign nationals. So should we assume that this conflict is over? Seems like it for now. But 2 worries still remain. One, no one knows for sure why Iran attacked Pakistan in the first place. On paper, it was about anti-terrorism, but strategically, it made little sense. Maybe Iran has more targets in mind. Maybe Tuesday's attack was just the start. The fact is, we don't.
Yeah, fam, we back. So as y'all see, apparently Pakistan was chasing some rebels when they ran into Iran, and they had some intelligence on where they were, and they went for them. Pakistan and Iran are normally friends, so that's why you see the spokesman saying that they're our friends, and they don't want no trouble with each other. So I think that'll get wrinkled out. In other news, besides the bombings in Gaza continuing and is getting ridiculous at this point, you have the World Forum who came together, and they're coming up with new plans. And they're also talking about new diseases. That's 20 times worse than what we've already seen with the last pandemic. So let's see what's going on. They got Indian people blowing dust all over them and they got all kind of rituals going on there. I mean, they can't curse them. They already wicked enough. I mean, so let's check this out.
The most powerful people in the world are meeting in Davos, Switzerland this week for what they call the World Economic Forum, where they cook up crazy ideas to get rich, make our lives miserable. Let's check in to see how today went, shall we?
Why should I?
The most
She blowing all on their heads. She probably putting all kind of curses and heads on them. They don't know what she in that saying or doing. Man, that was hilarious. But that just recently happened, and they're talking about some new disease X that's coming out. Man, y'all already know they've been in the lab cooking, man. So y'all check this out. If they scared, you should really be scared because they made it.
Is a term for a hypothetical illness, one that has not happened and is currently unknown. In the scenario, experts from around the globe are evaluating what would happen and what we would need to do in order to prepare for a virus that could claim up to 20 times more lives than the COVID-19 pandemic. In Davos, the Disease X scenario took center stage Wednesday.
You may even call COVID as the first Disease X. And it may happen again.
The WHO Director General acknowledges tough lessons were learned during COVID-19.
We lost many people because we couldn't manage them. They could have been saved, but there was no space. There was no enough oxygen. So how can you have a system that can expand when the need comes?
This bioethics professor says the pandemic showed us how one disease absorbing all available resources can lead to other health issues falling through the cracks.
A cancer diagnosis did not take place, with very severe consequences for the people that were affected.
Schukling says there are also ethical questions to consider when preparing for the next big health emergency.
Do we try to limit the number of lives that we lose? Or do we limit the number of life years that we lose? To what extent should we be concerned about equity considerations? Are we just concerned about health outcomes?
He cautions Canada is not ready.
We will be wholly unprepared for this because we are under-resourced. We don't have the staff, we don't have the beds available, so it will be a major problem, obviously.
Anything happening is a matter of when, not if.
Catherine Ward.
Yep. So yeah, man, y'all stay prayed up out here, man. The righteous don't have nothing to worry about. Psalms 91, the Most High should protect us. 1,000 on the left hand, 10,000 on the right hand, but we should still stand. No matter what's going on in the world, man, y'all keep your heads up and y'all keep thanking the Most High as we move another day closer to the coming of His Son, so He could put this earth back in order. Because as y'all see, it's plenty of chaos to show and there's plenty of chaos to know. But with all y'all knowing, know that the Most High has us protected in these times, that He has our back. And we really have nothing to worry. We need to keep the commandments. We need to get ready to have another Hebrew year, keep the holy days, and stay righteous. 2024 going to be a show, I'm telling y'all. A lot of stuff going to go down. They've been doing too much blasphemy, and they've been doing too much sin. And I believe the Most High is going to make a move on the chessboard against humanity to let them know that He still is the Most High. Because clearly humans think that they're God. So I'm going to get up out of here, family. I'm Base Jerusalem. This is the Hebrew Life. Shalom.
Who's locked in?
In the times, everybody coming to the watchman. Tribulation, every nation, devil out here plotting. Going back to the world that's like eating your vomit. Son of the highest, crack the sky like a comet. We don't need opinions, you could really keep your comments. Thought he wasn't coming, but he had perfect timing. Can't be sleeping on your job, man, we the watchmen. 5, 4, 3, 2,